him eating or drinking, and they say, he has a demon. The Son of Man came eating and drinking, and they say, look, a glutton and a drunkard, a friend of tax collectors and sinners. Yet wisdom is vindicated by her deeds. At that time Jesus said, I thank you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, because you have hidden these things from the wise and intelligent and revealed them to the infants. Yes, Father, for such was your gracious will. All things have been handed over to me by my Father, and no one knows the Son except the Father, and no one knows the Father except the Son, and anyone to whom the Son chooses to reveal him. Come to me, all you that are weary and carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light. Here ends the gospel for the day. Please be seated. Yesterday was the 4th of July. It's a tribute to one of the most remarkable demand documents ever created. And we are still trying to figure out exactly how to extend freedom and liberty to everybody equally. 100 years after that, the French gave us a statue that we put in New York Harbor called the Statue of Liberty. On it are inscribed those timeless words of Emma Lazarus. Give me your tired, your poor, your wretched, your ever-teeming masses yearning to breathe free. The wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, the tempest-tossed to me, and I will lift up my lamp beside the golden door. I make reference to these because they are fairly similar to the words of our gospel lesson today. Come to me, all you that are weary and heavy laden, who are carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. It's a famous gospel text. And I don't know of any time in my entire ministry of now nearing 65 years where I have felt it was more appropriate than it is today. Because as I talk daily to people on an individual basis, and as I watch the newscasts, and I listen to the radio broadcasts, and I listen to conversations, I find people that are weary and heavy laden. Instead of feeling euphoric, they feel anxious. They feel stressed. They feel depressed, fearful, and anxious. They are fearful and heavy laden because they are worried about their health. They worry about economy, of the possibility of losing their job, of not having money to see them through very troubling times. Fearful that the church might never be the same. I wonder how long it will take to make it back. There are some that tell us it never will. And so we are stressed. We are fearful, we are anxious. We indeed are the weary and heavy laden people. And on this Sunday morning in our gospel text, Jesus says, come unto me, you weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest for your souls. Take my yoke upon you, and I will help you through these troubled times. It is an invitation, but it is also a promise. Come unto me, you weak, weary, and heavy laden. And I don't know probably of anybody who is here this morning that does not feel weary at times or heavy laden through the last 4 or 5 months. The reference to the yoke, of course, is the yoke of oxen. 2 oxen can carry a load better than 1. I don't know much about the carrying capacity of oxen, but I was told by the keeper of the Clydesdales that 1 Clydesdale can pull 7,000 pounds, but 2 can pull 18,000, and if they're yoked properly together, they can pull 25,000 pounds. And Jesus said, don't bear the burden alone. Come to me, and I will give you rest. And we say this morning, are you kidding? We are not resting very easy this morning. Weariness and being heavy laden has its problems. It is when we are weary and heavy laden that most of our problems come upon us and seem heavier than they ever have before. Gordon MacDonald talked about, well, Gordon MacDonald was an author, and he wrote about his father taking him out skiing. And he said his father said, Gordon, most of the bad accidents that happen in skiing are the last hour of the day. Because you're tired, you are weary, your body isn't reacting as good as it normally does, and plus the long shadows cast darkness upon the snow, and the icy patches and the bare patches you can't see. And Gordon said, during my skiing career, I found out that that was very good advice. So many of the major problems that we've had are created by times where people were just too weary to make proper decisions. The Exxon Valdez oil spill, the Challenger space explosion, the Chernobyl nuclear reactor, the almost catastrophic 3 Mile Island affair, all were attributed to, in a major part, by weariness and tiredness, fatigue on the part of people who were in charge. Most of the fights between domestics, between husband and wife, between children and parents, happens in the evening. People are tired. People have been working all day, sometimes wrestling with the kids. And it's a time when many people begin to feel just ready to fight. Now the world recognizes that we have problems with weariness and being heavy laden. And some of the ways they try to combat them is really very humorous. 15 years ago, I was at the Mall of America in Minneapolis, and I was interested to see one of the stores there was called the Minneapolis. It was a business where you could spend 90 cents a minute to rest, to get relief from the stress of shopping, or just the everyday problems of life. You could come to a room called the Deep Space, Ancient Mist, Tropical Isle, and you could just fall asleep and take a nap. Or you could listen to the voices of nature, the birds chirping, the waterfall, the water rushing down a river, or waves crashing upon the shore. It was a time that you could relax at 90 cents a minute. And that place was packed all the time that I was there. No, I didn't go in there. I just watched it. I wasn't willing to spend the 90 cents a minute. I was more peaceful than that. But it was interesting how many people felt the need. And when you go to the malls now, you'll see chairs or people that do back rubs or whatever, they massages, because they realize that people are weary and their bodies are tight. Give you a chance to relax. I read an incident where a mother the other day was playing with her young son, and they were playing with guns, not real guns, but make-believe guns. And the young boy was, I guess, about 6 years old, pointed the gun at the mother and shot. And the mother fell over and fell on the floor and laid down. And the child was very surprised, and he sat in a chair and watched her for about 45 minutes. She didn't move. And so he ran next door to call the neighbor over. He called the neighbor, and she came running over, and she looked down at the fallen creature that she was her neighbor. And she said, Jenny, are you okay? Jenny opened one eye and said, don't blow my cover. This is the only chance I've had to sleep all day. In Korea, there is a place called the Heoyung Healing Center that does what they call living funerals. You go to this place, it's free of charge, and you make out your living will and testament. And then you find a coffin, and you lay in the coffin for 10 minutes. And you think about all the opportunities that you have and the good things in life. The last reading I had, they said over 25,000 Koreans have made themselves avail this thing that they could actually find some peace from their harried lives. In some situations, people rectified relationships that had deteriorated over many years. Some people changed occupations. And some people who were thinking of committing suicide decided that life was worth living after all. Some of the things that people do to eliminate stress are pretty funny. And Jesus says today in our gospel text, come unto me, you that are heavy laden, and I will give you peace and rest. Develop a spiritual center in your life, and you will find someone that is with you during these troubled times to assure you that the end is in God's hands and it will be a positive result. But I think there are a couple of things that I would point out to you that Jesus did to relieve stress in his life. Yes, Jesus did some things that relieve stress. And after I give you these, I have 3 of them. Maybe you can think of your own. Because Jesus not only said that his burden was light, he worked to make it light. The first thing I think that you can think about as far as relieving weariness and the burdens of life is simply not to carry too much. You can decide how much you want to carry. All of you who are older, and particularly the men, we have to come to the realization that we can't lift as much as we used to when our muscles were stronger. And it's kind of embarrassing to us because we think of masculinity as being able to lift a lot, to challenge ourselves. There are things that I don't choose to carry anymore simply because they're too heavy. And we do that physically. But one of the problems is sometimes we don't do that emotionally and mentally. We carry the problems of too many people around. And when somebody else
asked to become involved in our lives and carry some of the burden, we choose to do it until it becomes too much. The Bible tells us that Jesus went out in the wilderness for 40 days for peace, for reflection, to get ready for a ministry. And in his ministry, there were times that he got into a boat and went out into the sea because things were just getting too heavy for him. We're talking about Jesus. And if Jesus found there were times when he had to take a break and not carry so much around, maybe it's not strange that we should do that too. The second thing to reduce stress and weariness in life is to remember you can't change your life by changing other people. How many times have you heard somebody say, well, my life will be better if only my wife, my child, my parent, my best friend changes. Then I'll be okay. The only person you can ever change is yourself. But so much of the time we're stressing out because we feel we have to change everybody else. Jesus said, you're going to have burdens. You're going to be stressed out. People aren't always going to listen to you. But when you go out preaching and you try to witness to the gospel and people don't listen to you or rebuke you for it, you just shake the dust off your feet and walk on. Don't carry the burden. When Jesus talked to the woman at the well, as she went into town, he didn't say, oh, please, I might have insulted you. I don't listen to me. He didn't say that. He let her work on her problems herself. When the rich young man asked about salvation, he told him how it could be achieved. There was already a part of him. But in his case, he had to sell his goods because they were more important than God. And the person walked away, and Jesus didn't chase him down and say, okay, well, let's compromise on this. Didn't try to change people. Didn't run after him. Just talk about the Word of God. If it takes shape, it will. If it won't, there's nothing much you can do about it. You want to change your life, change yourself. I think the third thing that I thought about in Jesus' life was he never had unrealistic expectations. Isn't that interesting? Jesus didn't have any unrealistic expectations. He didn't think that everybody was going to follow him. He didn't expect there would be no problems in his ministry. He saw things as they were. One of the things that I notice is that people have unrealistic expectations all the time. I'm talking about this pandemic. Not going to totally ever go away. It's a part of our lives now. It just isn't going to mysteriously disappear. You notice the children's books are not Cinderella stories anymore, where the girl finds the prince and they live happily ever after. Look at the Dr. Seuss stories for children. They're all of them filled with problems that young people and old people face alike. People have such unrealistic expectations. When I get a college degree, everything will be fine. I'll make lots of money. Everything will be all right if I have the proper girlfriend or boyfriend. Jesus didn't want to go to the cross. an unrealistic expectation. In the Garden of Gethsemane, this Jesus prays to God, his Father above, if you can remove this from me, please do it. And he immediately recognizes that that's unrealistic because his destiny was to suffer and give himself for mankind. And then he says, nevertheless, not my will, but your will be done. And the sweating of blood stops. And he finds peace in his faith, in his connection with his Father. I doubt that many of you today are not in some way weary and heavy laden. And Jesus comes to you and said, I will be with you. Place your faith in me and share your problems with me. And yoke yourself up with another Christian who you trust and help carry the load. Don't take on more than you can carry. Don't try and improve your life by changing everybody else's. And don't have unrealistic expectations in a very sinful and a fallen world. And the weariness will be less. The burden will be lighter. And the best way to lighten it further is a firm grasp on your faith, on your worship, your prayer, your biblical amen. The sermon hymn is 611 in the red book. I heard the